Hey, Dave here, and tonight we're going to review the work of Syd Mead. Now, Syd Mead is the best of the best, I believe. He did pass away back in December 2019, I believe, and ArtStation did this nice piece on him, kind of remembering his, giving homage to his greatness, right? Syd Mead does focus a lot on sci-fi themed concepts, and I think some people call him the grandfather of concept art. Maybe. Makes sense. And what's so cool is most of his work, or a majority, like 99.9% of his work was done traditionally. And I think he loves to use gouache mainly for his painted works. But I've seen a few of his pieces where he does use markers for his sketches. And I remember watching a kind of an interview, maybe an interview, I'm not sure, but he does have a background in product design, industrial design, and there's this kind of nice transfer of skills from that field onto concept art. And maybe in his time, maybe there was no like field called concept art. It was just more about maybe illustration was just like the name for it, but yeah, he does have very interesting designs and very interesting. He's not just a designer, I would say. He's more of an artist as well, or also an artist. And so yeah, let's begin. So yeah, most of his figures or most of his pieces are pretty clean, not very impressionistic, which is, usually I tend to lean more towards that kind of artwork. And by the way, I am using a gallery by who's this guy? James Vahan. He does have like a gallery of Syd Mead's work on his Flickr, and I will link the link in the description below. And you can also download, because you do have an option to download all of the images. There are a few pieces here in the gallery that I don't think are Syd Mead, but there are only a few. Most of them are of Syd Mead. So yeah. And you'll notice that his pieces are generally complete. You've got some figures, you've got some vehicles, and you've got an environment as well. He doesn't do obviously a lot of keyframes, because obviously it's not like the main thing that he does. And maybe I don't think there were a lot of like keyframe shots back in the day. I think most of them were more like epic scenes, like direct kind of shots. And yeah, now some of these photos or images are kind of pixelated, but you can still see in this kind of level how defined he is. Like the shapes of the vehicles and the figures, the human figures, are pretty clear. And you'll notice in his work, he doesn't have like super harsh textures. I think the best thing he does is the reflections. You can see a lot of reflections in his fashion design, especially in his vehicles. He just knows how to play with that. He knows how to play with that concept of reflections. And again, he's doing this with gouache, right? And it kind of makes me realize how, or it puts things in perspective, because with Photoshop and with every other kind of program out there, we can do so much, and yet Syd Mead's work still permeates, it's still intimidating, and the fact that he did this traditionally is pretty amazing. For example, in his vehicle right now, you can tell there's this nice kind of shading or gradient in the skin of the car, from red orange to like blue, and it kind of goes back and forth. And again, the way he handles the reflection, especially say in the front part of the car, the windshield, right? It just feels realistic, right? And also his figures do have that kind of vintage look. And maybe you've noticed this in like a lot of like vintage types of illustrations, where they did have a look when it came to painting or drawing people. They were generally more aesthetic compared to because right now there's so many like styles, right? But back then there was like a solid template. There was a way of illustrating people, you know? You would see them, the type of kind of, you would see it in like movie posters, book covers, pinup art, you know? And all sorts of things. And Syd Mead's work does have, or like a lot of his work is very saturated and very kind of neon-like. He likes to play with colors. Most of his work is not that boring. In this piece, you can actually see the figures. For example, this lady in the front checking out the car. Very vintage-like, the hairstyle as well. But yeah, he did this with gouache, right? And even the way he paints like the creatures, they're obviously based off of a horse, you know? And yeah, so a lot of his work is kind of futuristic in a way. I used to think he did work for like the Star Wars films, 4, 5, and 6, but apparently it was another guy. I can't remember the actual name of the guy, but they have a similar style. I believe they both use gouache. And when using gouache, I think you can create something that's way cleaner. And look at this. It's just so fine if you look at it, you know? Now this one actually feels like a keyframe, right? It's not super dynamic because it's still, you'll notice that the shot is kind of stable, where there is the horizon line is pretty clear, you know? Or, I'm not saying it right. There are a lot of horizontal lines, you know? So it's not a weird type of perspective. It's usually a, well, not one point. Well, kind of one point. Almost, usually at one point, but sometimes he does deviate from that. And again, with the colors, it's so kind of retro and kind of cyberpunkish. Maybe I'm not using the right terms here, but look at the reflections in that car. The way he was able to suggest the forest environment or the tree line in the background and implant it on the car, it's pretty impressive, you know? And again, a lot of his work is very presentable. It's not sketchy like mine, not impressionistic like mine. It's very fine, right? Now, it's not super highly rendered, like almost photorealistic. It does have a nice style, right? An illustrated style. You can tell it's kind of an illustration, but it does have a professional touch to it. And maybe it's because of his industrial design background. You'll notice even their whenever they do like concept sketches, you know, the way they lay out their sketches in the board, it just looks very, very presentable. And I think it does really like focusing on vehicles more, I feel. The environments are kind of cool as well. This is actually one of my favorites, and I may make this the thumbnail of this art review episode. Look at the amount of, first of all, the colors are very saturated, very, very interesting pink, you know, very kind of neon retro look. And you'll notice in all of his vehicles there is this sense of reflection. Most of his skins or in the vehicles are reflective. They're not matte, they're not textured, they're just very, very shiny and reflective. And yeah, it's just super cool, you know? And again, painted manually, right? It's very, very high class or very conceptual, I think, this one, because it's not like super clear where exactly this is. It's obviously some kind of party. I'm not sure if it's like a montage of things or maybe this is one entire scene. But I like how most of the lighting, even though the place is kind of dark and it's kind of lit within, a lot of the lighting is coming from the bottom, and you can tell by the reflections or the shadows in the figures, right? Most of the lit areas are in the bottom of the chin, you know, and there's a lot of consistency when it comes to the lighting. With this space, it's super fine again, and very aesthetic, I would say, very futuristic. And it makes you wonder, like, how would someone be able to visualize the future, you know, given what they know? Because I do know right now, if you ask like a number of concept artists to visualize the future, it would all turn out very, very different compared to Syd Mead. Like way more weird, way more intense, I believe. You can actually get a sense of, even though most of his pieces are futuristic, it does tell you a bit about the time Syd Mead lived in and how that influenced his illustrations, right? And most of it is actually, it's closer, it leans more towards a utopian kind of world. I don't see a lot of like chaos in his work. And for example, this piece, it's kind of positive, I think. And yeah, it makes you wonder what this world could be, you know, if there was more way for development to happen, you know, if ideas weren't like withheld and hid from like the public, there would be so much progress. Because if you kind of just check the timeline of development, there was this like exponential increase in development, and then at a certain point, things just stopped kind of developing, and there's this kind of stagnation, right? This one is too pixelated for me, but even right now you can see how cool it is, and I think it's the reflection. You can see the red in the bottom of his vehicle and the blues on top of the vehicle. So the entire environment is being reflected on the this kind of shiny vehicle thing. Like if you notice the cars of today, we still have wheels, you know? And I don't think, the only thing that's kind of changing is the look of the car, but it's still based on like wheels. So, because you know, I've seen like very interesting looking engines where it's based on like magnets and shit, and it's just sad that these things aren't allowed, I guess, because once you have like technology that's kind of a bit more free, maybe that's not the right word, if it's more available, it will just empower so many people, and I don't think that's what some people want, you know? If you can kind of focus in or make people dependent on certain like big firms, big companies, big corporations for their electricity, their transportation, and similar things, you'll be able to just get more control, and I think that's what some people want. So for this piece, it's actually a sketch. You can tell, made with markers. And this kind of shows you that it doesn't really matter what, well, it does matter what medium you use, because obviously it's going to influence the way your piece is going to look in the end. But if you've got the fundamentals down, it will just show through even in a simple kind of sketch. In this case, he did use like two values, like kind of like a warm gray and a blue, and obviously a line sketch in the beginning with a typical fine liner. It's pretty standard to use like fine liners in industrial or product design, interior design, architectural design, any kind of technical field, engineering, fashion design, maybe a little bit, but sometimes they get a bit more artsy compared to like of all the design fields, they're the very artsy types, or the best ones, or the more artistic types, you know. There's kind of a spectrum of it, you know. So yeah. Pretty cool stuff. And shit, no photo bashing. He had to paint every single thing, so that's very, very commendable. And again, it kind of takes out the excuse, you know, because with all the, not only do we have like more tools, but we have more like techniques to use within those tools, and we can use like multiple tools at the same time, so we don't really have an excuse to make shit work. So this kind of, you know, it forces us or encourages us. To me, seeing Syd Mead's work is very, very encouraging. Now for me, I believe this is part of his later work, where he was experimenting with digital art, maybe, because I see a lot of like gradients. Maybe the line sketch was done manually, and then the coloring was done in Photoshop or something. And very, very futuristic again, but you can tell by the hairstyle it's really based on a certain, time in history. And the vehicles are usually the best in his work. And of course the reflection, the entire body of this vehicle is kind of see-through, right? It does have like a dark tint, you can tell, but it's also highly reflective. So pretty interesting design. Yep. And I like the kind of line sketch in the background of the two figures, right? Oops. Sorry about that. Yep. Oh, I forgot what this movie was about. They did a remake, I believe, of this film. I can't remember. Fuck. Apologies. Oh my god. Oh, I like the chick above, kind of floating. Very, very interesting. And you know what's so fascinating is whenever people do like night scenes, like they paint, like the way they are able to convey a night scene when painting in gouache it's just interesting, Painting light into a dark background is pretty hard. But like this one as well. And look at how most of the buildings are actually silhouettes, right? But it still feels big, and he just knows where to put or how. I think it helps to be deliberate with the thickness of your paint strokes, because if you make them too big, it's obviously going to kind of warp things. But if you make some of the paint strokes very small, it does kind of convey a very small feeling to a certain part, wherever that small stroke is kind of placed on, right? So, this could be just a modern day thing. Obviously, there's this structure in the background that's pretty, interesting. Very nice interior of a car here. Very retro looking. Oh, look at that. Very, very... This is the type of work you would see in a product designer's portfolio. You would see some rendered stuff with some sketches, and very, very highly rendered pieces. Very interesting environments. They're not very, again, super dynamic shots, They're very epic looking, but they're not exactly like keyframe, because he's not doing illustrations for film. Or, well, he did, but what I mean by that is he's not doing keyframes, that's all, He's doing a concept that's supposed to inspire a certain scene, But it's not exactly going to be an exact representation of a shot, I don't think this is a Syd Mead, so we're going to skip that. Look at this. It's an interior piece, and it's super kind of high quality, and I love it the way the colors kind of... For example, the surrounding areas are kind of muted. It does have like a yellow-brown hue, but it's not super saturated. The thing that's a little more saturated is actually the screen on the wall, and it's this big TV, and it just looks so cool. You can even see some of that reflection seeping through obviously the faces of the human figures, and also like the lower part, or the leg of that first chair, that single chair that you can see, that kind of bottom plating. You can see a bit of that green yellow reflection, or light green blue reflection. So, and again, even though it looks futuristic, it does have a retro kind of look. So it's going to be based, whenever he does futuristic stuff, it's going to be based on his reality. And for example, whenever you like look at films right now, sci-fi films, a lot of the futuristic themes have a basis on the current kind of timeline or reality. So yeah, it just it's interesting, and it just shows you that you can kind of push things to a more interesting level, right? Not a lot of holograms here, right? But oh my god, that looks so cool though. Damn. And again, gouache. So I don't think these were like, I think these are more like quick concepts, because they're not like fully done, and they're actually kind of small, I believe. And a lot of his work also fits like editorial illustration, because it's just more clean, very, very presentable. Wow. Look at that car, again with the car reflections, and the way he just, like his color choices are very, very specific, right? And they're not super complicated. He does have a very simple color palette, that he does limit himself with, and it actually ends up, like he's able to make it consistent all throughout. And so this one is actually one of those marker sketches that I'm talking about, and even at this stage it already looks pretty cool. The line sketch, very strong contrast, especially with the shadows, just pure black, and then some value gradation or value changes with the grays, right? For the second level of the shadows, because there are some parts that are like really pure dark, like just black, and then there's this gradation of values in grayscale, and it looks cool. And when you're doing stuff like this, it helps to not make the shot super complex, so it's going to be easier to illustrate or sketch out design, your concepts, your vehicles, your people, your characters, your scenes in general, right? Oh my neck. Okay, so snow scene. And look at how he was able to implant the forest, right? Or the trees in the actual reflection of the car, or in the side of that car, right? Oh, you know what? Maybe this is my favorite one, because I believe this is the best one of his. And look at the play between warm and cool tones or hues. Fuck. And again, he loves his reflections, and the fact that he can kind of, roughly map out how the reflections go with the form of the vehicle is just fuck. Right? Damn. And again, not super highly textured. I mean, you got some like rock texture with like the columns, but for say the ceiling and the wall, it's just very simple. And again, with the vehicles, the main thing is usually the reflections, right? Now for this vehicle, it's actually in the windshield, of course, and the kind of rim, or in the bottom part of the car has the reflective parts, and I think the top part is a bit more matte or solid, not very reflective. And again, you can definitely see that product design influence, that industrial design influence. Oh, I've seen this before. I'm not sure if this is a Syd Mead thing. Same for this one. Ooh. Nice. Look at how I was able to simplify the trees in that kind of front car in the reflection. Like the entire top and front is kind of combined, and it's just one piece of like glass, right? And again, it's gouache. So, it's pretty intense. So this one's a bit more sketchy for me, but I still like the colors. Very, very retro, right? and it feels like the future, you know? And another thing that's kind of cool about this work is that it makes me feel something. It makes me feel excited for the future, you know? Like I want to be a part of the world in a way. Obviously I'm scared of like, sure there are dystopian worlds, but sometimes a utopia can be a dystopia. Because it may look happy and safe, but you know, yeah. Now this one's a pretty full scene actually. They could be in some kind of ship, because I can see like some stars or some kind of galaxy in the sky. I'm not sure if it's like a projection or something, or maybe they are in an actual kind of ship, right? And his figures look really cool. Even the way he does the hair, it's so typical of that kind of time. Very high quality, you know, in terms of like human figures, painting characters in general. I think Syd Mead is part of that golden age of illustration here in the States, because I think the States is where it really, you know, jumped, where things really jumped in terms of like art, and they just kind of spread out from there. Or from here, because I'm in the US. Nice. Oh, this lady's hot. And she has like a bodyguard, maybe, or an assistant. Highly reflective. You can't really see a lot of robotic parts, but it's probably some kind of robot. And again, it looks like it's actually part of the environment. Why? Because of the way Syd Mead was able to implant the environment onto the actual figure. Right? Oh, so I think this is a cover for NASA. I'm not sure if this is an official thing, but he did use markers for this one. You can tell, and yeah, fuck. I'm not sure if this is a Syd Mead piece, but you know, it's sci-fi enough. Oh, the colors here are kind of simple, not too much variation, but it is highly saturated, especially with the warmer hues, the yellows and the pinks. Is pink a warm? I think yeah, it's a warm because it's close to red, right? Now this one's a pretty dynamic shot, right? Fuck. Look at those well, how do I explain it? There's such a play between the warms and the cools, and it's just so consistent throughout this work. Again, right? Now this one's actually kind of, I feel like this could be more like me, because it's not super defined, and I do like how he was able to separate the foreground from the background. The foreground is actually lighter in a way, even though it's pretty close to a silhouette. There are a few value changes that it's enough to kind of help you distinguish which one is the tree, which one is the figure, which one is like brighter, you know? There is a bit of that distinction in terms of information, but it's a bit light, you know? And it does have a poster kind of feel. It's so meant to be presented. And that's another key. Oh, this one is actually not the Syd Mead. This is let's just step out of the frame here. Oh shit. Escape. Oh, it's by Mikko Kinnunen. Strip club concept for Mass Effect 2. So how do I shit? Okay, we're back, folks. Oh, arigatou. I think this is in Asia. Right? I can't really say. Is it? Senpai. Okay. And it's pretty good with the architectural concept as well. And again, he's not just doing one thing, you know, like one shot of like a vehicle. Most of his stuff includes an environment in the background. And sometimes the environment is actually the main focus. And I'm not sure how he gets his ideas, you know? But you can tell there are forms that repeat. He's not very, he's not a fan of like sharp corners. He likes to round his corners a bit. And that's something that I've noticed in his design style. Right? It's not very aggressive to me. There's a bit of softness, definitely. Very curvy, right? Rounded corners. Is this a Syd Mead? Not sure. And the colors are very, very strong in his work. And it does a lot with just conveying a certain mood or feeling, right? Is this a Syd Mead? Maybe. Oh, it is, I think. Oh, so this could be like the base, some kind of base in the moon. Is it in the future? Or is there one now? Ooh, conspiracy. Oh, look at the lower right part. That's a big brushstroke. You can actually see the texture of the canvas, right? So he didn't actually render the entire image. So I actually like seeing a lot of breaks in people's work where you can actually see a bit of the canvas. And I think Syd Mead does use it sometimes. Oh, I can see it now. Sometimes he'll let the texture show. It's a kind of a combination between the pressure of the brush and the actual texture of the paper or board that he is using or using. Now this one is so typical in product design or industrial design where you show the sketches or conceptualization and of course the kind of the rendered look. Whoa! And I think he does like quite a few color studies before he actually starts because obviously he's doing this in gouache, you know, it's hard to like, you know, repeat things from the beginning. So you kind of have to be a bit smart with how you work and be more efficient, right? Because you don't have layers in real life when painting. Again with the reflections. Ooh, look at that background, right? The way he simplified the trees and that nice mountain, right? Oh, concept sketch. Oh, I think Derek Zabrocki did a study of this. If you check out Derek Zabrocki, I did an art review of his work as well. He has a piece where he did study this specific piece of Syd Mead. So I'm guessing he's also influenced by Syd Mead's work. Strong shapes, strong shadows. Great use of color. And reflections. This one does have a bit more texture. Is this a Syd Mead? Design wise I think, but there's so much texture in the background that I'm starting to doubt if this is a Syd Mead. Only because he's a bit bolder in the sense that his painting is a bit more packed, not very broken up. But I think it's a Syd Mead. And he does have a few sketches or concepts where he does show off the line work. Oh, this one does have a nude in it. So maybe in the future we're going to be way more confident because we have like amazing bodies. Hopefully one day, you know, maybe that will be the standard where, you know, we're just kind of naked and just super confident with ourselves. Wow! Again, line sketch with some color. Maybe he did color this digitally, perhaps? Maybe. Oh, this one's actually pretty fine. Ooh, and again, the main texture is that reflective kind of texture. it actually helps to make the environment way bigger, right? Because it shows you parts of the environment that you can't see. So that's pretty interesting. Oh shit, I think we're done. So, yep, that's the end of the gallery. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Art Review series. Please check out Syd Mead's work. He does have a website, even though obviously he passed away. He will remain forever in our artistic hearts. And I do promise you that if you just spend a few minutes just consuming, just, with your eyes, obviously, his work, I think you will be inspired, to make your own stuff. And I also do recommend, as a kind of a side note, John Park did a few like concepts where he studied, or he wanted to kind of study the color schemes of Syd Mead. So check out John Park's portfolio as well. I did an art review of his work as well. So yeah, you can download all of these images from Flickr.com. I will link all of the relevant links in the description below. And yeah, I hope you're doing good. I hope you're working hard. I hope you're still alive and sane. And yeah, keep painting and stay free.